Okay, so you're probably wondering where I've been for the last little while. I was planning to talk about that in another video, but yeah. You could probably, judging from the title, you could probably tell what this is about. I have not scripted this. I've literally just gotten home. I was out of the house for the day and, was in the middle of... I was at uni when I heard the news, and I knew I was going to have to talk about it as soon as I got home. I was thinking to myself for a little while, please. I just hoped it was some kind of cool joke, but it is real, and it absolutely sucks. And we're gonna just talk. We're gonna just talk for a little bit. So, like I said, this is completely unscripted. So, I don't know how long this video is going to go for. However long it goes for, just bear with me while I try to process this and talk about it a little bit. So, yeah, if you haven't heard the news, if you've been away from the internet all day and haven't caught on to what's going on, we've just gotten word this afternoon that Akira Toriyama, the man behind Dragon Ball, the creator of Dragon Ball, and the character artist, and the character artist of Dragon Quest, and another thing that I'm going to actually talk about in depth in a little bit, in Chrono Trigger, has passed away. He was 68, and it's just really shocking news. And I know I've seen social media. It's hit a lot of people pretty hard. A lot of anime fans, a lot of gaming fans, a lot of content creators, basically, and myself included. Akira Toriyama he meant a lot to a lot of people, and I have to interrupt for a moment because I'll have to apologize for any excess noise you can hear in the background. We've gotten a new fridge today, so we've been busy cleaning that, and so there's going to be a bit of excess noise in the background. I do apologize for that in advance if it somehow makes it through the mic. And I know that's it's a bit weird and inappropriate to be hearing that during what is essentially a eulogy, but I do apologize. But I I don't know how to process it myself. It's very, very... It's not very often you have a major... You hear it like a major name in all things nerd. Like comics, games, anime, like all that sort of stuff, like the creative space. You hear news of their death, and it's unanimously and universally heartbreaking to everybody. It's because of the impact that they made, and like I felt that way when Stan Lee passed away a few years ago. In fact, it hurt me a lot more because, and I did actually have a video about that where I talked for maybe a good 40 to 45 minutes about, what he meant to me as a creative, being a Marvel fan growing up, being a fan of, characters like, Spider-Man, even though technically he didn't create Spider-Man, Steve Ditko did. And, his death was also pretty sad. But just, the global impact that a person like that has it's it hurts a lot, and I think in the space of anime and manga, I mean, there's like Kiento Miura. When he passed away, that was very sad. But and I don't mean this to be, you know, I don't mean this any offense towards Miura's impact, because his was definitely, he inspired so many people in the industry, and was a fantastic storyteller, and made one of the best manga in all time in Berserk. Like, but Berserk didn't have that global mainstream impact that something like Dragon Ball did, for instance. And Dragon Ball was this global thing, that, you know, even if you didn't watch anime, even if you weren't, you watched Dragon Ball. We all watched Dragon Ball. I'm pretty sure there's like three, there's three anime, the three just cartoons in general that, like three anime in general that we all watched when we were kids, and it was Pokemon, it was Digimon, and it was Dragon Ball Z, and that's what he did. That's what Toriyama did. He created this just global mainstream phenomenon, and his death is going to be felt in mainstream pop culture for a long time, because it's one of those things you didn't really see coming. Like, we all hear stories about mangaka dying prematurely simply because of the, you know, the what it takes. I wouldn't be able to describe, you know, what being a mangaka is, what being an anime or manga creator is, because it's, yeah, I wouldn't be able to begin explaining it. But you hear all these horror stories about, you know, what they go through with their both physical and mental health, and a lot of them, you know, you do hear a lot of stories about them passing away prematurely. And I don't know exactly what it was that Toriyama died of. I can Google it like now really quickly, because if I just type in Toriyama, it's going to be, yeah, the news is all over mainstream news sites. I'm looking at the ABC, which is like Australia's like national broadcaster, BBC. Acute subdural hematoma. I have no idea what that is. You'll have to excuse me for a moment. Trauma or injury, usually a direct hit, damages your veins or arteries. It's something to do with soft tissue, subdural hematoma, like the brain, like head injuries. So yeah, well, that's what it is. I'm not going to get into too much detail in that regard, because that was simply my curiosity as to what, you know, the cause of death was. But I, again, won't get into it, because it's really not the time nor the place to be discussing that. It's all about remembering his life and his contributions. And yeah, like I said, like Dragon Ball Z was, like, I watched Dragon Ball Z. I haven't watched most of Dragon Ball. I did recently start watching the original Dragon Ball. It's all on Crunchyroll, and I think a lot of people are going to now, you know, revisit Dragon Ball on Crunchyroll, because it's all there, and, you know, it's all, you know, his, you know, masterwork, except for GT, of course. But, you know, that's still part of the universe he created, even though he wasn't directly involved. But Dragon Ball Z as a kid was one of those cartoons growing up that was just, wow, this is cool. This is fucking awesome. Like, Just the fight, like the fight scenes were just out of this world. I can't even really begin to describe it because it was just one of those things you just loved as a kid, and just made you realize, yeah, like this is what Japan is doing. This is what Japanese animation is. And it didn't make any sense at all. It's just like a bunch of dudes superpowered fighting each other, but you just loved it anyway. And then you get older and you start to, understand, the deeper meaning behind it, and about, overcoming adversity, and about, being better and being stronger, and fighting for what you believe in, and fighting to, protect the things and the people you love. And that's really the message of it, looking back now. But as a kid, you don't know any of that. Like, you just, a bunch of buff dudes fighting each other. This is cool. They're shooting lasers at each other. This is sick. And yeah, but again, there's something really great in that I just loved. And I think the most memorable is probably going to be, for me at least, is probably going to be the Boo Saga, because it was the one that I remember the most vividly, because it went on and on and on, and I'm like, oh my god. Like, and when, Fat Boo was born, and then turns into Majin Buu, and then there's the whole, like, multiple episode arc with Majin Buu, and then watching the episode, I remember it exactly. I was at my grandparents' house one morning, and I watched it. Goku summoned the spirit bomb he needed. Everybody around the world, lend me your power, and him forming the spirit bomb and finally throwing it, because it actually took multiple episodes for the spirit bomb to be created, and then he finally throws it, finally kills Majin Buu, and it was like, oh my god, yes, this is the day. And that's it. It was one of those moments that you talk with people at school about, like, were you watching this? That's what it felt like to me. And while it wasn't my favorite anime as a kid, one of my favorite, like, besides like Pokemon, Sailor Moon, and Cardcaptor Sakura, Crush Gear Turbo was another favorite of mine. I don't know if many people remember that, but I do vividly remember just absolutely just digging Dragon Ball Z and the Buu Saga. Yeah, one of my favorite anime memories as a kid was that episode. It was perfect. It was everything it needed to be, and the Spirit Bomb is still the coolest thing. But apart from that, I never watched the original Dragon Ball. I watched a little bit of GT. I watched the end of Dragon Ball Z, of course, like right up to the end, and then I watched GT as a kid. I've sat down and watched episodes of Dragon Ball Super because they're on TV occasionally, but I haven't actually gone through it. So I made the plan to watch all of Dragon Ball, like, from the beginning, and I started with the original, and I am 10 episodes in because I actually stopped watching it for a while. But I think, after hearing today's news, I think I am going to pick it up again and continue it, because it's one of the ways that we can honor him. We can honor Toriyama-san, but just watching and consuming and enjoying the things he's given us, the creations he's given us. And his Dragon Ball was his magnum opus. It was all his, and it was his masterwork. And regardless of, what you feel about Dragon Ball now, it's shaped a lot of people's lives, their childhoods and growing up, and yeah, so let's all just do that. Let's all just watch Dragon Ball. It's all on Crunchyroll. Just binge it. I think that's what I'm gonna do. But and I wasn't going to talk. I'm not going to talk much about Dragon Quest because I haven't played any Dragon Quest. I didn't grow up with Dragon Quest. I was a Final Fantasy kid. I didn't play any Dragon Quest growing up. But I do know. Oh, that's Toriyama's designs. That's exactly, that's great. Um, I've played a little bit of Dragon Quest Builders. I think that's a fun game, and I do want to get into Dragon Quest. I've always been meaning to play some of them because apparently they're great. Um, but I do like the more casual ones, the like more adventure ones, not necessarily the RPGs. Simply because it's more of a way to get people in, like new Dragon Quest players in. I Dragon Quest Monsters. I've got Dragon Quest Monsters on the Switch. Maybe I should do an LP of it. I should do an LP of a Dragon Quest game, just to, I don't know, just for to commemorate Toriyama in my own way. But that's moving on to arguably, my favorite thing that he did. And that was, like I said, I wasn't a Dragon Quest kid. I was a Final Fantasy kid. But even I will admit that it's not none of the Final Fantasy games are my favorite RPGs. Let alone JRPGs. I keep saying Super Mario 3 is my favorite game simply because it was the first game that I ever played and then I fell in love with as a 3-year-old child. But if I had to pick what I think is the best game of all time and what means the most to me emotionally, it's Chrono Trigger. And everything about I could do a whole video about Chrono Trigger, but I think I'd have to actually script it because like it's one of those things where I have to know what I'm talking about. But Chrono Trigger is that game for me, that JRPG for me. And the characters, the story, the gameplay, the music, everything about it is perfect in my eyes. And, one of the great things about it was that it had character designs by Toriyama. And that was considered the dream team when the development of Chrono Trigger started. That was like the dream team of Japan, of JRPGs. You had Sakaguchi, who created Final Fantasy. You had Yuji Horii, who created Dragon Quest. And he had Akira Toriyama, who created Dragon Ball and was the character designer on Dragon Quest. And that's why I think it's the Chrono Trigger characters specifically that made me realize I love Toriyama art. I love Toriyama's art style for designing characters. I just think they're some of my favorite design. Like that's one of my favorite. They're some of my favorite design. Like that's one of my favorite art styles is Toriyama's character designs because of Chrono Trigger. And because some of the characters in Dragon Ball are actually super cute, like, yeah. I was gonna say like I was gonna list all the great Dragon Ball waifus, but you know what I mean. Like Bulma, Android 18, Chi Chi. I think they're really cute. Especially Bulma. I think she's a really like just beautiful character in general, and she always has been. And I realized, yeah, that's Toriyama. Like Toriyama's art style is just really adorable. Like the eyes, and just the facial design, and just the facial designs, and yeah, I love Chrono Trigger, and Chrono Trigger is some of my favorite characters. And what makes them especially cool is like the retro ness of it all. Like, it's not like they're not as like, the colors aren't as vivid as they like as Dragon Ball character, like what Dragon Ball Super was. Simply because it was done in '95, so there's that certain retro, like old school feel to it, and I love that. I think that's really cool. I just want to gush. I really just want to sit here and gush about Chrono Trigger, but I know I can't because this video would take too long. But just know that they're all great. They're all great. They all have that distinct style. Like Magus is basically Vegeta. I've always like, just in his cadence, his facial visual cadence, he'll always be like that, just angry, just badass character to me, and he'll always just be Vegeta. Chrono is very much Goku, like Goku. And yeah, like Marl and Luca are just Bulma. Now that I think about it, like the very particular like facial like quirks that are in their designs, you can kind of match them. You can kind of see where he got inspiration. But yeah, I love it. I love Chrono Trigger. I love Chrono Trigger so much. You ask, you're probably wondering why I keep, I keep saying Nintendo Directs suck because there's no Chrono Trigger remake, or I'm not getting my Chrono Trigger on Nintendo Switch Online. It's because it's my favorite thing of all time. I could probably just sit here right now and just say it is my favorite game, emotionally. Super Mario 3 will always be like a special game to me, but I think Chrono Trigger, in my heart, it's the favorite game in my heart. And Toriyama was partly responsible for that. And I think that's what I'll always remember about. I never read any manga, but I'm sure if I was to sit down and actually consume the Dragon Ball manga, it would be like just this great visual journey from start to finish. I never read manga because manga wasn't a thing I did growing up. Like, I didn't read comics simply because it's way too I realize now in retrospect it probably would have been way too expensive of a hobby, and I wasn't much of a reader. I read a lot. I used to read a lot, actually. But like books, like actual books with words in it. No, that just makes me sound like the fucking pleb. But no, I didn't read many comics. I didn't read manga. I read manga now, of course, because I can buy them and I can afford them and I can collect them. And getting all of Dragon Ball from start to finish would be like a gargantuan endeavor in terms of time and money investment. But, there's probably ways I can read it without, hurting my pocket. I'm not going to mention them specifically, and I'm sure that, that's not really a wise thing to be doing now, following the news today. Like, that sounds like a really shitty thing to do. In fact, it probably is a really shitty thing to do. Like, don't talk about, go on websites and read all of Dragon Ball. Like, if I had the opportunity to invest I probably would. I probably would just buy Dragon Ball manga. Like, especially Dragon Ball Z, because the anime meant a lot to me as a kid, and reading the manga now is probably going to be a much better experience because of it. So, yeah, I'm probably not going to ramble on too much longer because, like I said, this isn't scripted, and I shouldn't be, keeping people for too long, because that's not what I tend to do, not what I really want to do, because I know a lot of you might consider it boring, so I won't keep you for too much longer. All I wanted to talk about was I just wanted to gush about Toriyama's work for a little bit, because it meant a lot, and it means a lot to so many people, and people who have made Dragon Ball their entire life. Like people who have invested their childhoods and their lives into the manga and the anime. It's going to hurt them a lot worse. But, I wouldn't be doing my part technically as a content creator of anime-based content on YouTube if I didn't at least try to honor the great man, by, truthfully discussing my history with his work. And it's not that great of a contribution, because it really isn't in the grand scheme of things. But I'm not here to argue, and I hope that other people won't argue either. Like saying, what do you know? Like, you didn't read the manga, or blah, 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 like all that sort of shit. Because, like I said, we all consumed Toriyama's work in different ways, and for the people that did, invest more and more time and attention into Dragon Ball, I feel for you guys. I really do, because, obviously that meant, like, that work meant so much to you, and this man meant so much to you. And I do feel for everyone else today, like, going through this. It's like I said, it's one of those days where a big figure in our culture, like anime and all things geek culture, like in the mainstream, it's one of those days. It's like losing Stan Lee. It like if Hayao Miyazaki passed away. Like, again, touching wood, because God knows I wouldn't want that to happen, and anytime soon. But you know what I'm talking about. Like, we all mourn the loss of, like, people in the anime and manga community, but that's strictly for, like, that's really us. I mean, I'm sure there's other people that mourn too, because it's sad, but like I said with Kentaro Miura, it's not one of those, it's not, this is going to sound horrible. But I hope you can understand what I mean when I say it. Akira Toriyama is one of those mainstream names that hurts. All of his passing is going to be one of those devastating things for all things geek and pop culture. That's how big he was. That's how influential he was. That's how much his work meant in the mainstream. And it's terrible. It absolutely is. Like, it is one of those days. And it's going to be felt. It's going to be felt for a long time, because, and there's still so much of his work that's still yet to release. Like, there's Dragon Ball games coming. I don't know, I can't remember what it's called, but it's essentially Budokai Tenkaichi 4. There's the new Daima anime, which is basically like a remake of the Dragon Ball anime. There's Sandland, both the movie and the game. I'm pretty sure the movie's already released in Japan, but the game based on the movie is going to be coming out soon. And that was an entirely new work, like his first. I'm pretty sure it was like done in '97. I think when Sandland was first created, but like we didn't really hear much of it outside. You don't really hear much of it, and when it like, oh, there's a movie coming out, oh, there's a game coming out, and it's like I have no idea what this is, and it felt like his first new work in many years, other than Dragon Ball and Dragon Quest. So yeah, there's that still to come. There's Dragon Quest, so many Dragon Quest projects that have yet to release. There was the Dragon Quest 12, there was Dragon Quest 10 offline, and the other Dragon Quest games that were announced. Remember, I think it was in 2020, that 35th anniversary stream, where they had just announced a whole bunch of projects, and I think only one of them came out, the Treasure Hunters one, and that was it. Like, we're still awaiting all those other big Dragon Quest titles. There's still all of them to come, and I don't know when they do release. Yeah, that's the saddest thing about it. Like, that's it. There's going to be no more, like, Dragon Ball is done. Dragon Ball's done. He was still technically writing it. And maybe they'll get, like they did with Miura, like they'll get Berserk will continue for someone like Berserk continued from someone like a colleague of Miura's, like an understudy of his that he trusted, with his life, and he carried on Miura's work. Maybe the same thing's going to happen with Toriyama. Maybe Dragon Ball will continue in one form or another, with someone that, cares deeply for the franchise and, wants to carry on Toriyama's legacy. I don't know. Will it be the same? Absolutely not. I don't know if Dragon Quest is going to continue, because it probably will, but it's going to be a major transition, especially if they go for something different in terms of that's worst case scenario. They go in a different art direction, which I don't think they should at all, ever, because Dragon Quest is Toriyama's art. Without that, you don't have Dragon Quest. I don't know if at this point Nintendo will even, or Square Enix will even consider Chrono Trigger, or either a remake or, they'll release it. They'll release it on Super Nintendo, obviously, but whether or not a remake at this time is appropriate, unless it was something he was secretly working on before he passed away, and they were just waiting for the right moment to announce it. It's been heavily, I don't know if it's been rumored, but it's been rumored, but I don't know if it's been if there's any concrete evidence to it. That Nintendo has been working on a remake. They've said a big Super Nintendo RPG remake was coming, and they announced Super Mario RPG. But then they said that you hear it all the time, Chrono Trigger, a remake is rumored, it is coming. And to be perfectly fair, if it does happen, it's going to be, obviously, it's going to be announced with a lot of sadness, because you don't know if it's one of the last things Toriyama worked on before he passed away. And that depends on how soon they announce it, if they announce it at all. But if they don't, and it hasn't been. There's no evidence to suggest that a remake has been worked on. Then we have to, or at least I have to admit that one will never come. And before, I would have been really, really sad and kind of frustrated about that because of how much I love that game. But now I'm okay with it. I'm gonna move on from it because, like, how can you do it any other way other than with the character designs? Really, it's him. It's always been him. He was the man behind the, like, that's what you see. The character designs, the monster designs, that's front and center in that game. And it's him. It's Toriyama. And without that, and I think that's the one thing, above all else, I'm going to take away from this news. So, yeah, like, there's nothing I can do. I'm just a weeb on the internet. But all I do want to say, now that the dust is cleared, is that I just want to say thank you to Akira Toriyama for being a part of my childhood, for being a part of my growing up, and, you know, a big part of my adult life through his work in some way. Thank you for giving me one of my favorite art styles in any characters in any, like, fiction. Thank you for being a part of arguably my favorite video game of all time and one of the best video games of all time. Definitely the best RPG of all time. Like, and I've always said I won't hear any arguments from any Final Fantasy VII fanboys today. I mean, I do love that game. I do enjoy that original game a lot, but I will always believe Chrono Trigger is better, and I will always hold Chrono Trigger in a higher regard as Square Enix's masterwork. Final Fantasy VI. I don't know if you love Final Fantasy 8 or 9. Yeah, you can come at me all you want, but I'm just not going to listen. Chrono Trigger is Square Enix's best, and Toriyama was partly responsible for that. And so for that, I say thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've contributed and all the lives you've influenced and just made better, even for brief moments in time. Thank you. And you're probably one of the hardest. You probably worked tirelessly for decades on everything you've done. And yeah, you can rest now. It's okay. It's not okay. It's never going to be okay. But you can rest now, Toriyama-san. Be at peace. Peace. And I send all my condolences to his family and all of his colleagues and anyone who knew him personally and anyone he influenced, anyone he worked with, anyone he influenced in the industry, who are probably, you know, hurting a lot more today than all of us fans. Like, my condolences go out to you, and just know, even if you don't pay attention to anything any fans are saying today, even if I have to say it, like, speaking to no one, just know that your friend, your colleague, your family member who did a lot for us, fans, and his contributions will never be forgotten. It will never be duplicated, even if you try to get someone in to replace, like to continue on his work. Even if you got, like I said, with what happened with Kentaro Miura, even if you did that, it won't be the same. It will be imitated, but it will never be duplicated, and it's gonna hurt all of us knowing that he's gone. So rest in peace, Toriyama-san. We will we'll lend you all of our power so that your spirit can live on. Thank you. I will stop now. I mentioned at the top of the video that I was gonna explain. No, I've almost started crying. My nose is kind of stuffy at the moment because I almost did start crying, but I've composed myself. I will continue. I will explain. I'm losing words now because this isn't, like I said, this isn't scripted, so I'm in a mess. But I will get into that at some stage when I can. Explaining, where I've been and what's going on in the near future. I will get to that at some point, but I just had to make this video today because I just wanted to talk about it and get all those heartfelt words out of my chest. So yeah, it's the video I didn't want to make, but we're all going to be saying our own piece in the days to come, and this was my piece. So if you managed to make it all the way to the end, thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys in the next video whenever I decide to make it and whenever you decide to watch and listen. And until then, take care of yourselves. Take care of, make sure you always take care of the people most important to you in your lives, and always keep in touch, and just show all your love and affection to the people you care about the most all the time, because you never know. You never know when things will change, and all the words, all the things you wanted to say to them, you'll have to say out loud to no one, because you won't be able to say it to them because it will be too late. I'll see you guys later. Thank you for listening. Akira Toriyama, once again, thank you for everything, and rest